Hello my friends, and welcome to this next video in the series where we shall be discussing expressions and statements in JavaScript. In previous videos, we've seen variables, how to declare a variable and assign a value to a variable. We've also looked at numbers and played around with numbers a bit. We've also looked at strings and seen how to manipulate strings in certain ways. In this video, let's turn our attention to expressions. Expressions are just codes that evaluate to a value, and the value they evaluate to are usually of a certain data type. Let's go to our browser's console and look at expression more closely. Right here is our browser's console, and I'm going to type some expressions right here. When I say 2 plus 2, this right here is an expression because it's going to evaluate to a value. And the value it evaluates to is 4. 4 is of the number data type. When I say 3 minus 1, this also will evaluate to a value. The value it evaluates to is 2. And this 2 is of the number data type also. When I say Dominic plus is a good plus guy, this right here is an expression and it's going to evaluate to a value. It evaluated to Dominic is a good guy. Now, the value it evaluated to is a string. It's just a much more longer or larger string. So we've seen that expressions are just pieces of code that evaluate to a particular value, and that value is of a particular data type. Let's look at another expression. When I say 5 greater than 8, this right here is an expression, but what is it going to evaluate to? Let's look at this 5 greater than 8 and ask ourselves, is 5 greater than 8? Of course, 5 is not greater than 8, so this is false, right? And when we click enter, we get false right here. So this expression 5 greater than 8 evaluated to the value false, and false is of the Boolean data type. Remember in previous videos we talked about Booleans, right? And we said that Booleans have one of two values, either a true or a false. In this case, this expression evaluated to false, which is a Boolean value. If we had said 5 less than 8, indeed 5 is less than 8, and so when we click enter on the keyboard, we're going to get a true. So we've seen that these expressions 2 plus 2, 3 minus 1, Dominic plus is a good plus guy, 5 greater than 8, 5 less than 8, they are all expressions and they evaluated to a particular value, which is of a certain data type. In programming or coding in general, expressions can be used to drive your code upward or downwards. By that I mean, expressions can help you to do certain things in your code or to avoid doing certain things in your code. And they are used together with statements usually. And what is a statement? That is what we're going to talk about next. Now let's head back to our VS Code to look at what statements are. Right here is our VS Code, and we're inside of our scripting.js file, which has been linked to this HTML file right here. So what are statements? Statements are codes that does a little bit of work. For example, when we declare a variable by saying let first name equals Dominic, this right here is a statement. And it is a statement because it's doing some work. We are creating a variable of first name and assigning a value of Dominic to this variable. So this statement right here is doing the work of declaring a variable and assigning a value to it. Let me go down here and write more statements. So I can say let phone number equals 1 2 3 4 5. This right here is another statement. And in this statement, we're declaring a variable of phone number and assigning the value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to this phone number. So these are statements in JavaScript. Now we're going to look at a little bit special statement in JavaScript. It is known as the if statement. The if statement is written like this: if, and then open parenthesis. Inside of the parenthesis, we're going to write an expression. You can see when I hover around the parenthesis, VS Code suggests to us that expression expected. Inside of the parenthesis of the if, we can say 2 greater than 4. So this right here is an expression and it's going to evaluate to a particular value. I'm sure by now you're guessing the value it's going to evaluate to. 2 greater than 4. Is 2 greater than 4? That's not true. And so that makes it false. So it means that this is going to evaluate to false. But the if statement doesn't end here. After the end or the closing parenthesis, we're going to open curly braces like so. So within these curly braces, we're going to write some statement that should be executed if the expression inside of this parenthesis evaluates to true. So we can say something like console.log 2 is not greater than 4. So this is a very simple if statement. We're saying right here that if 2 is greater than 4, console log this. But in this case, is 2 greater than 4? 2 is not greater than 4. So this evaluates to false, in which case this code is not going to get executed. So what actually should get executed? We should include an else statement and then open our curly braces like this. So within these curly braces, we're going to write the code that should be executed if this expression right here evaluates to false. In this case, we can say something like alert, this gets executed, like so. So this is a very simple if statement that has an else counterpart to it. You can just say it is an if else statement. Here we have an expression that will either evaluate to true or false. If it evaluates to true, then the codes right here, no matter how many the codes are, will get executed. So we can even have more console.log and we say another log, and we can also log another thing and say console.log I'm tired, like so. So all of these codes inside of this block will get executed. Now I have used the word block. What is a block of code? A block of code can be seen as the code that starts from the opening of this curly brace to the closing of this particular curly brace. So we have two blocks right here, right? This is the first block, and this one right here is another block. If this expression evaluates to true, all the codes right here will be executed. If it evaluates to false, then the codes inside of the else block gets executed. Now I'm going to save this file and we'll check it out on the browser. When I get to my browser, you see we receive this alert that says this gets executed. So I'm going to close. Let's head back to our VS Code. So we see that this code is a code that gets executed. And what's the reason? Because 2 is not greater than 4. So this evaluated to false. And because of that, the code inside of the else block was executed. What if we change it to 2 less than 4? Now, is 2 less than 4? Of course, 2 is less than 4. And because 2 is less than 4, this evaluates to true. And since it's true, all the codes right here will be executed. So we're going to see 3 items logged onto the console. Let's save this file and check it out on our browser. Right here is the browser. So we'll say 2 is not greater than 4. Another log, I'm tired. All the 3 statements were logged to the console. Now that we've talked a bit about expressions and statements, let's head back to our VS Code and write more expressions. So I'm going to clear everything right here instead of this code. I'm going to say 2 equals 4. This right here is an expression. And what we're saying here is 2 is equal to 4. If you take a look at this, you see that we have double equal sign right here. This is different from having a single equal sign, which is used to assign a value to a variable. So when we say let guy equals Dominic, This right here has a single equal sign. And so we usually use this equal sign to assign a value, in this case Dominic, to a variable, Guy. But when we have double equal sign, we usually check if what is on the left is equal to what is on the right. So in this case, we're trying to see if 2 is equals to 4. This is how we usually use it in JavaScript, and it's called the equality operator. So we're trying to check if 2 is actually the same as 4. And what do you think this is going to evaluate to? Because remember, this right here is an expression. What is it going to evaluate to? Is 2 equals to 4? Of course not. So let's try to console log this and see what we get. Console.log 2 equals to 4 and save. So let's preview on our browser. Right here in our browser, we see that false has been boldly printed out. And that's because 2 is not equals to 4. Heading back to our VS Code, we can also say 2 not equals to 4. But how do we do that in code? We do it with the exclamation mark. We say not equal to 4. So we want to check if 2 is not equal to 4. And indeed, 2 is not equal to 4. And so this evaluates to true. Let's console log this expression and see what value gets logged onto the console. So I'm going to save and head back to our browser. And right here, we see that true gets printed out. We can also check if strings are equal to each other. So let's head back to our Visual Studio Code. So instead of our Visual Studio Code, we can say console.log Dominic equals Dominic. Remember, it is double equal sign. So we want to check if this Dominic on the left side is equal to the Dominic on the right side. And truly, the Dominic on the left side is equal to the Dominic on the right side. So we'll have true printed out on the console. Let's save this file and preview on our browser's console. So on the console, we can see that true has been printed out. What if we say Dominic not equals Dominic? Let's see what we have. So we'll say Dominic not equals Dominic. Of course, this Dominic right here is equals to Dominic on the right. So when we say Dominic not equals Dominic, it's a lie. And that's false, right? And so we're going to get false printed on the console. So I'm going to save this and we'll check it out on our browser's console. Now on our browser's console, we can see that we have false printed right here. So that's how we can write expressions and statements in JavaScript, and we can even combine them together to do meaningful things. Now let's head back to our Visual Studio Code and play around with this web page that we have right here. So what I'm going to do is accept an input from a user. We want to accept a name from the user. So we'll also check if that name is equals Dominic, then we're going to say, yes, welcome Dominic. We're going to have yes, welcome Dominic printed on the web page. Now let's go to our Visual Studio Code and see how to do that. So right here is our Visual Studio Code. I'm going to clear out all the codes that we've written previously and then come to our home.html page. First of all, our JavaScript code is linked right here in the head. This is where I said we can link it, but usually it is better to put your script down here as the last thing in the body. This will help JavaScript to read your codes better. So I'm going to take our script here and put it right here as the last thing here. And after the H1 here, I'm going to have a button that says, please click me. And below the button, I'm going to have a paragraph that contains nothing. So we're going to put a text inside of this paragraph that says, yes, welcome Dominic. Now let's head back to our scripting.js file and then begin to write out our JavaScript code. The first thing I want to get is the user input. So I'm going to create a variable to store that user input. So I'll say let username equals prompt. So prompt is the function we use to get user input. So we're going to say, please write your name. Yeah, so whatever name the user provides, we're going to store it inside of this username variable. The next thing I want to do is to capture this button on our web page. So I'm going to say let button equals document.querySelector button, like so. So what I'm doing here is to create a variable with the name button. Remember, you can create your own variable and call it whatever you want. So, and right here, I'm capturing that button. We're yet to talk about document object model. So when we talk about document object model in future videos, you're going to understand this document thing properly. But for now, what I'm trying to do here is to capture that button that is right here on our web page. I'm also going to try to capture the paragraph that we have there. So I'm going to say let para equals document.querySelector and then P. So in this way, I've captured the button and I've also captured the paragraph. So after capturing the username from the user and capturing our button and capturing the paragraph, what we want to do is to find a way to check when the button is actually clicked. So when we click on the button, we're now going to check the username that the user has provided. And if it's equals to Dominic, then we're going to have something printed inside of this paragraph right here. So we're going to say button dot add event listener. So this is a function that we have right here. And we want to listen to something on the web page. In this case, click. So we want to know when the button has been clicked. So that's what we're saying, button.add event listener. And inside of here, we're going to say click. So we're listening for when that button has been clicked. And if the button has been clicked, then let's check for something. I'm going to check for that right here. So I'm going to give a comma, and then I'm going to write a function right here. So that function will run and then check if the username we've provided here is equals to Dominic. And if it's equals to Dominic, then we're going to do something. We've also not talked about function, but I thought it would be okay to just do this here in this video. And in future videos, we're going to understand functions more. So I'm going to open parentheses and then write this. So instead of here, I'm going to write an if statement. So I'm going to say if username is equals Dominic, all right? So remember, I'm going to open the curly braces. And then what do I want to do if username equals Dominic? Remember, this should evaluate to either true or false. So if the username is Dominic, that is, if the user provides the name Dominic, it means that this will evaluate to true, because then Dominic will be equals to Dominic. And if this is true, if this expression right here evaluates to true, then the code inside right here will be executed. So what do we want to say? We now want to say para.text content should be equals to, I'm going to introduce a template literal here, and I'll say, oh yes, you're welcome. I'm going to add this code right here and bring it that username that the user has typed. All right, so I'm going to say username like so. So what am I trying to do here? If the username is equals Dominic, I want the content of the paragraph to say, oh yes, you're welcome, then the username, which should be Dominic, of course. But what if it's not Dominic? Then we're going to introduce the else block right here, like this. And so we'll do this if this expression right here evaluates to false. So what we want to do, I'm going to say para.text content equals, oh no, you're not Dominic. All right, so I'm going to save my scripting.js file and also save the home.html file. Remember to put a script tag right here. So let's go to our browser and see what happens. So right here is our browser. And as soon as you refresh, you're going to get the prompt, please write your name. So let me type in Dominic. So I'm going to say, okay. And now this is our button that says, please click me. And let me make this a little bit bigger. So let me click on this button and see. It says, oh yes, you are welcome, Dominic. And if I were to refresh one more time and choose a name that is not Dominic, so let me say Ebere, and click on OK. Now, when I click this, it says, oh no, you're not Dominic. So then, my friends, you've seen how we can use expressions and statements and even the if statement to do something more meaningful. In the next video, we're going to look at what function is and see how to write our own functions. See you in the next video. Please, my friends, like my videos and subscribe to my channel. It will go a long way in helping me to create videos like this.